Hi and welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. The topic for today is building intelligence into your software supply chain security. The guest for today is Shashank Pramod Dixit. He's principal consultant at Sumeru Solutions.
As a developers, you are supposed to innovate. You are supposed to write code, innovate, think of logical things, and create a problem.
Starting to use AI in a smoother fashion, what level of maturity should we have as teams?
I think AI can help you big time in this kind of outliers.
The listeners would be aware of, for example, solar winds happened, the Uber issue happened, it was a secret leak. Yeah. Welcome to Breakpoint Security Podcast, folks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of smart security teams and their cutting-edge security and engineering practices. We'll share fun and engaging stories about clever optimization techniques that scale your defenses and also keep your data safe. Tune in and be a part of the conversation where exciting innovation meets real-world application in cybersecurity. Hi and welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. The topic for today is building intelligence into your software supply chain security. The guest for today is Shashank Pramod Dixit. He's principal consultant at Sumeru Solutions. He helps with CISO advisory, leads the security consulting teams at Sumeru, and is currently building Bowman.ai. Welcome to Breakpoint, Shashank.
Thank you, Nilu. Thank you so much for this invite. Yeah, looking forward to our conversations.
Yeah, thanks for being here. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, it's good. Saturday morning. Saturday mornings are better than Sunday mornings usually.
Always not closer to Monday. Okay, so I think we have heard in the industry this buzzword for a very long time, but given the development in the capabilities and technologies with respect to intelligence, AI, and a lot of other things happening, it is, I think, the right time for us to talk about something like this. And I was quite looking forward to this conversation with you on this, on going deeper into this area. Just for the audience, we have been talking about DevSecOps for a long time, but when you think of the small and medium-sized businesses, particularly who are thinking of setting up DevSecOps or are in a place of maturity where they want to automate a lot of security in their software supply chain, they have many challenges as of today. One of the few things that you will definitely face is there are a ton of security products which are already available in the market in this area. And if you have chosen a particular tool, you will then be hit with a storm of false positives once you implement that. And many of your development teams, particularly your devs and others, will reach out to you saying that, hey, there's a lot of noise that you're generating. It's not applicable. This is false positive and things like that. So that's a big area. The other challenges that we generally face when we are trying to even set just the DevSecOps bit is the in-house expertise for security. The tooling automation is not there in many cases with us. There are budget constraints for buying expensive licensing tools for your enterprise and things like that as well. After doing all of this, when you go ahead with having these set of tools and setting it up, or maybe choosing some open source alternatives where you can work through, there's a lot of effort and maintenance that goes through from the security team side. So that's another side of it. On top of it, we are talking today about intelligence. So once you have dealt with all this, we go ahead with intelligence. The idea in this episode is also to discover, how intelligence can help with some of these problem statements for us practically. So the first thing that, Shashank, I wanted to know in this conversation is I wanted to take up the outside in perspective. When I say outside in is with respect to AI, particularly for our software supply chains. As of today, there are many tools that have started offering AI, like we call them AI powered tools, particularly in the area of SAST or DAST or other tools which we generally help to automate security in the pipelines, right? What about these teams that are planning to use these AI powered tools? How do you suggest they go about it? Like, is there a right or a wrong way of doing it, or they should look for any specific parameters, features, capabilities in these tools when they are planning to adopt AI powered security tools?
So yeah, let me go back to the time when shift left was a thing, right? Still, it's a thing. I mean, a lot of security guys are, but today we are talking about shifting down. So this is like a very recent things, So shifting left was all about having your security early in your dev life cycle and making sure things are addressed early so that you can save a lot of cost and effort when it goes to production. So, but what happened with that? Lot of tools and technologies to being became a sort of big thing for any organization, and it basically consumed a lot of resources. It consumed a lot of cost, and finally, what happened? It increased the effort of developers, which is the last thing one should do. Are you getting this? So shifting left has its own time, when the security was when we had to convince the people for security, then it came the shifting left. Now the time is for shifting down, where the it is said cognitive workload on the developers that we need to reduce, and that's where the shifting down approach is all about creating those platforms which are very strong and that can sort of take most of the workload from the developers.
Can you explain cognitive workload a little bit for the audience?
So, see, as a developers, you are supposed to innovate. You're supposed to write code, innovate, think of logical things, and create the proper code. But if I start pushing security also on top of it, saying that hey, there are some 120 alerts being shown by the SAST tool, will you be able to fix it by a particular timeline? It becomes a cognitive workload. Similarly, secure coding training, all the good things what security guys tell to developers, all are becoming cognitive workload for the developers, and that's why the things will start moving towards shifting down, where the platforms are going to be stronger, take the maximum workload, and ease out the overall pressure which is created by security on the developers or DevOps teams. And that is the space where all these tools, what you said, AI powered, and this is possible through AI and LLM, where people are figuring out the ways where they can reduce this workload and make the life easy. Yeah. So AI and LLM powered tools, uh, whether it is SaaS, DAS. Yeah, of course, there are uh, certain use cases which basically can make this tool smarter. Uh, we will talk more about this, but I'm just making a base for it that the things are moving towards shifting down, and the platforms are offering this different point in solutions, like how to reduce false positives, how to make sure that you are using the correct dependency, how to make sure that your dash tools are reducing false positive, and a clear set of checks which are being performed with some business context. So yeah, all that is happening, and as a team I would say, uh, identify what are the challenges you're facing. Based on that, there is a plethora of tools available, and this new age AppSec tools are offering very good point-in solution for different kind of problems. So yeah, that's a balance you need to strike based on your licensing cost, based on your bandwidth in hand, the skill set you have.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you also analyze what your cognitive workload is in that sense, and how much of that, in terms of features, particularly maybe some of these AI powered tools can handle at the platform level itself, so that it's not transferred to the developers eventually while they're doing
Exactly.
the development. So that's a good starting point. Uh, so let's maybe flip this around, and since we've been talking about AI powered tools and if we, for example, we are a team where we are at a level where we have been doing AppSec in a more ad hoc fashion, like we do some pen test sometime, we do some code review sometime, whenever it's feasible. And in some of us, we may also make it regular, depends on what level of maturity we are. Now we are thinking of having intelligence built into the software development pipelines and environment.
Yes.
So when we talk about building intelligence, where do we really start? Like I had few main things which become challenges for us in the traditional way of working. But I wanted to know from you first, like where do we start with respect to building intelligence, given that, of course, that we have DevOps in play already in our environments.
So yeah, so if you see the whole software supply chain or the full DevOps cycle, there are multiple places which are the you know which have a challenge statement everywhere. Like for example, SCA tools, right? So SCA tools they throw a lot of vulnerabilities, and then now these talks are happening where there are solutions which are offering reachability analysis. They are saying, are you seriously using those dependency or not? If it is not, then there is no need to consider those alerts. So for the people who are looking for, make the overall thing smarter, I think the very first point they can start with making sure that the developers get the right education, they understand the vulnerabilities, they understand the vulnerable code, and also the AI powered solution, which basically can help them to fix the code timely and efficiently. That is that will save a lot of hours of developer hours. So that is something easy to adopt, because you just see there are two ways of doing it. One is like you use the closed source uh, models, and then you take the input from there, and then give that intelligence to the developers. Another is like, if you have the bandwidth, you can sort of use some open source LLMs and then train with the data what you have in your enterprise or in your companies, and then create that. But I think that could be the starting point. Then from there you can work on your false positives, you can work on their dependency problems, you can work on build security, any kind of anomaly happening. So it's like multiple places in the software supply chain, starting from your coding to build to test to deployment. So all that has multiple problems, but I would say not to go behind AI for everything, but start with something very basic which has a bigger impact, and then reverse engineer from there, and then come to the places. Till you can also, like, you can build an IDE, you can have it in your developer IDE platform, have a plugin which can sort of get the intelligence from things. But yeah, again, it's different levels of maturity. So yeah.
So, in terms of prioritization, maybe that is something I see as the initial part, right? Because there may be 100 different problem statements that you have. You may have recurring kind of issues as well. For example, false positive is more on the operational side of the tools that you may be using for SAST or DAST or other things. But you may have priorities with respect to what kind of vulnerabilities or what kind of areas that you want to look at. So, is there a way of prioritizing this before we start solving for it using intelligence?
Yes. So that is one area where we have been working for last 1.5 years. So uh, once we get the business context of the applications which is under scan, and we also get the kind of vulnerabilities it is throwing, and what are the different technologies it is built on, and what is the overall coverage of different kind of vulnerabilities which is there, like whether how strong is the technology basically. So different kind of context if we supply, it is possible to train the models to bring some sort of prioritization to it. So you can like put in multiple parameters like CVSS, or which is powered by, of course, EPSS today, and you can also put some business context to it, like how critical business criticality it holds. Then what is the kind of support available to address to the problems, like for example how many developers are involved, how many security professionals are involved. So there could be multiple contexts which you can supply and come to a prioritized list of things to look at. So that really helps a lot, because throwing like hundreds and hundreds of issues to developers is like it's counterproductive. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, so there are some specific areas that that you will see do become may become priorities for many of us. So, for example, I was just talking about, I'll start with some specific things. Like, for example, false positives for all the traditional tools that we have in the area of application security, particularly. False positives are a big deal because they are huge in number.
Yeah.
And many times when you sit down to look at, is it really applicable? Is it really exploitable? You understand that it is not those issues or not, and then they have already taken up a lot of developer time by then.
Yeah.
So can we use intelligence, or how can we exactly use intelligence to deal with false positives?
Correct. So what we have done is like we used vulnerability data which was generated by our team, and we created some models which we start training with that vulnerability data. So it's the data of multiple scanners, multiple SaaS tools, multiple dash tools, and then we found that there is fair level of reduction of false positive possible with this kind of approach. But every organization doesn't have that luxury to have access to that kind of data and create their own models, because it brings a lot of overheads. Like you should have a machine learning engineers with you to create that kind of thing. So I would suggest to better go for a third party AI, generative AI, where it can sort of walk through the code and sort of once you have put the findings there, it can sort of alert you saying that hey, there could be a false positive there. So that is one approach of doing it. But the proper way is the first way, which we try doing, and but of course it takes a lot of effort from your side. There should be engineering team available to achieve that. At the same time, there is a cost involved, there is a infrastructure cost involved. So uh, that is there. So for the starting point, I think, especially with the level of SMBs or SMEs, I think you can rely on some third-party tools and third-party AI solutions for your uh, positive filtering.
Okay, okay. Um, there's also this area of, so you will see that many times when developers are aware that they have either a critical or a high risk issue, um, still in terms of fixing, that clarity is not there. And I've been on the offensive side. I've helped many developers understand what is the real impact, replicating the issue, understanding where the fix, where the right fix for that kind of issue in the entire code or application, in terms of providing the right kind of remediation, in especially on the pen testing side and other places where you're doing reviews. You will have a standard recommendation and go ahead and fix it.
Yeah.
With the new kind of tech stacks coming up, single page applications, different type of things today, it's not the same anymore in the way you fix things. So in terms of remediation, is there a major benefit that we can get with intelligence? We can use it in any way.
Sure. So one thing we can certainly do is like first to see what has to be fixed. Right. Many a times uh, there is no direct connection with the way things are in prod or things which are facing attack surface. It's not like you always have to fix those many alerts. And second thing is, from the AI perspective, now I have seen multiple solutions like that, which can sort of help you to understand the code, help you to understand the problem, and also help you to give you a proper solution. So the the evolvement of giving a pen test recommendation to this kind of recommendation today is huge, and there is a lot of value developers can derive from it, because it's like whether it's the commonly available platforms, whether it's Google Bard or OpenAI, or it is possible to, like, it can read the code, it can understand line by line, it can give you the context, and it can also like identify. Of course it's not like 100% reliable, but it's overall it's a strong point to start with, right? So it basically can give you analysis, it can also suggest the solution. So uh, there is a huge transformation happening, and it is going to be even smarter and smarter over the time. So I'm seeing there is a good trend which is coming up, and I think the traditional SaaS uh, tools should be scared of this kind of revolution which is coming in AI.
Yeah, they may have. So all tools are coming up with AI modules, so they may start one of their own. But coming back to a team where they are trying to add on top of it, what is the additional benefit in terms of remediation? So I understand that, just to clarify that for the listeners, uh, sometimes we would sort. Is it also giving additional lines of code in terms of what is the right way of writing some of the methods which are vulnerable, or is it going one step further with any kind of variations depending on the tech stacks that you have? So are there more specific benefits in terms of developer recommendations that you have seen AI give and that we can
Yes.
also try for?
So yeah, I have seen the solution which are there. So it basically gets the whole context of the code, the vulnerable line of code, and then it suggests a new you know editing to the code and give up where is the problem in the function and what are
Hmm.
the inputs we need to take care. And so it it can be very specific. So I think that is something which is if you want to do it at scale, I think that is very efficient way of doing it.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, I have seen that.
I think while you were talking about it, I also figured there are some contexts, for example, where you have recurring issues, right, in code. So you have a, for example, SQL injection because the same input parameter has
Yeah,
not been validated and has been taken as input like in 10 different places. Maybe it will be possible for the intelligence to also tell you what is the optimum place to fix it so that it gets fixed everywhere rather than fixing it
yeah,
in 10 different places in the code.
correct. So this is like one of the live example which I got recently, where once we had implemented the solution for one of the clients. In the first scan, there was somewhere around. So they added some initial as a first stage of around few repositories, and then suddenly the first scan found around 950 something plus vulnerabilities, and
Okay.
out of that, around
Now we are
400.
talking security.
Out of that 495 was the same issue got reflected in 495 different
Oh, wow.
instances. So it was very scary. But when we shown them, boss, this is 950, but you basically see the vulnerability categories. It is hardly 12 or 13 type of vulnerabilities which are being reflected in multiple places. So if you want to address this 495 issue in one go, then you just need to develop one code, uh, some sort of code sample which can be applied in one place, and same thing can be sort of replicated in other places as well, so that your one thing you fix at one end and that can be replicated other end. It basically can bring down the whole count by almost 50%. So yeah, so of course the AI, where AI is coming in picture is basically we got to know about different kind of, because we have been doing this vulnerability categorization and also adding some ASVS context to it. So ASVS, just to clarify, OSP ASVS, application security verification standard context to it, and then so we know that there is these are the bunch of vulnerabilities which comes in this particular category, and then when you basically go through the code, you know that this is the problem and the same problem has been replicated everywhere. So yeah, that really helped. So yeah, I mean it's sort of a combination of automation plus AI in a way, but yeah, it really helps.
Another area that I was thinking of is so we have been thinking from the perspective of developers and engineers, software engineers mostly, and what their pain points are. But there are also pain points when it comes to the security teams and the leadership, where you want to see patterns, right? For us, visibility is an important thing in security, and particularly see patterns or trends in issues which are there. Uh, Traditionally, tools do have a dashboard where they will show some level of, I would call it slightly more primitive sort of metrics and trends. Is there any benefits that you see that we can gain from that perspective using intelligence?
Yes, so I'll just tell you one very recent incident happened with one of the CISOs. So when we went with the solution and when we tried to explain, um, so then they ran some trials. They basically, so what happened in the process is there's a lot of friction happened between the DevOps and and the security team, because the solution
Usual
ideally the
suspects.
solution ideally the solution should be owned by DevOps and developers, and security team should enjoy the fruits of it. But the CISO got so much bugged up, and he said, "Boss, I don't know what DevOps. Why don't you just give the tool to my team? Security team will run it and see all the results, and then we'll make sure that we go behind the." So the whole definition of the DevSecOps has gone into the dog. In DevSecOps, we are trying to sort of remove that line between security and
Yeah.
developers and bring it in. Everybody is on the same platform. But here they are very clear to, if you want to work efficiently, let security do its job. Let's not get into the business of DevOps. So yeah, this happened, and definitely I think as a solution, AI solution, I think there's a lot of intelligence, lot of trends, a lot of analytics which can be generated, which is very useful for the security leadership. For example, in a simple trend, as good as how many scans you ran in a month or in a week is a very strong indicator that where my security is going, or how many fixes happened, what is the what is the decline in the vulnerabilities over the time, how many false positives are being identified, how many vulnerabilities are being sort of fixed by the teams. So there are different intelligence which we can provide like what are the different in each scan, what are the average number of vulnerabilities, then what are the vulnerability density across different kind of applications. So there are various matrices and analytics which we can lay out for the leadership, which can really help in decision making and have a very good visibility of the overall AppSec. Because uh, this kind of solutions are usually, you have all your applications in one place, the full visibility is there, and you can see that which developer team is doing, are pushing the bugs, which developer team is doing the good job, who are efficient and following the timeline. So all that creates really a good intelligence for leadership team.
Yeah, like who's creating the bugs and who's getting the bounties. So, not a great joke, but I think, yeah, I think these are quite interesting parameters. Generally, we are never able to go beyond the usual number of vulnerabilities and those kind of things in the traditional tool sets that we have. But teams can actually build this intelligence you're saying for all of these interesting sort of parameters for themselves, and maybe also some contextual parameters, because depending on business, I believe there may be a few more things that you can add which the leadership is interested in,
Yeah.
and you can build that. Okay, I think since we are talking about AI, it becomes important to also talk about the learning and learning model, where ML is being a part of it.
Yeah.
Can teams use, just to get that out of the way, because I'm personally very curious in any of the areas, what is the level to which we can apply ML as of today in the current state? In this
So
case, I was actually particularly thinking of, is there a scope for teams to use machine learning for, particularly for minimizing the set of false positives? Given that, so particularly I'm talking about teams where they are either mid-sized companies, organizations, or maybe smaller sized, where the data, there is a challenge of the quantity of data available, because a lot of learning models that we're talking about are essentially doing statistics with a lot of data points. The more the better. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So in terms of data quality, when the data quality is not to the 200%, and the quantity that you have to feed into these learning models is also less, how
yeah.
do teams deal with that challenge?
So for smaller setups where there is not enough bandwidth of expertise and skill set, so I would suggest that there are solutions available already where they can just simple plug and play, and then they can start implementing their security pipeline top of powered by AI, and then can get the intelligence. Because if you do it in house, then definitely, like you said about the problem of data. Another problem is could be the you need machine learning experts. Then MLOps comes in the picture. Then you need bandwidth of machine learning expertise, and then you need resources for that. Cost is involved, infrastructure is involved. So it becomes a difficult setup basically. So for the smaller setup where the you don't have a luxury of data and ML skill set, then definitely I think it's good or smarter ways to use the existing solutions which are there, or even look for the closed source of AI things where you can sort of directly leverage their APIs and uh, make the overall workflow very smarter for you. Uh, because as I said, if you want to do it in house, it comes with a lot of overhead, and you need to have bandwidth to do that. So yeah, I would suggest using a simple plug and play solutions which are available, and there are solutions which are doing very smart jobs. I've been into the tracking of all this in new age AppSec things which are coming in the market. It's very interesting. It's getting heated up and amazing, and how companies are outsmarting each other. That is interesting.
You were also talking with respect to the learning models, right? In just the previous point, I remember you talking about closed source and open source LLMs.
Correct.
Is there anything like preferred for such teams? Like you start with open source, go to closed, or you say you start with closed source in this case? I understand.
Yes.
Is there
Yes.
any right or wrong there to go about using
So
these?
if you create your own LLMs, then all those security issues with LLMs also you need to take care. Like there is a separate set of OS top 10 for LLMs, and so the security wise and its privacy wise, it's a big challenge if you like create it in house. So if you are ready to take care of that and you have the bandwidth and the skills to create that, then you can take any open source LLM and then use your data and then create your own intelligence platform. But
Like if you look at it in absolute terms, the benefit is only cost because they're open source, or are there other benefits because they may have a bigger data set to work with?
on a flip side, the cost involved is more in if you do it in house, because then you will hire people, you will
Okay, that way, yes.
that's another cost, and then infra cost is also there. So because these are like resource consuming things to do, so that is also there. So yeah,
Okay. Otherwise, you obviously would delegate it to
both
enclose.
have pros and cons, but if it's only cost, then I would say the APIs are available with existing closed source machine learning models, and then definitely I think to leveraging that is better for a small setup.
Acha, okay. Yeah, that I think clarifies this very well. Thanks for that. But there are a few other very interesting use cases which I wanted to discuss, particularly with respect to AI. So coming back to it, so while we're talking about software build pipelines, and a lot of this automation generally revolves around our software build pipelines that we have. So one of the things when you do set up tools, especially in traditional tools where you just have automation, not especially intelligent
Yeah.
automation, we are looking at one of the root causes of false positives, which has been such a overhead for teams, for which people don't even address. Developers will not address these issues, will not fix these because there are so many false positives. Is that a vulnerability is reported, for example, in a method. So a method that is being used or a function being used is vulnerable, but somehow in the code, and this happens many times. That it's not being called. So just for the listeners, in the
Yeah.
area of reachability analysis, right, which recently many tools are starting to take a stab at it, to tell developers that hey, this is showing as vulnerable, but this is not reachable from your, you're not actually calling this vulnerable function, and hence you are not vulnerable, the application is not vulnerable. So that reachability analysis is a big portion, because if we solve that piece of the puzzle, then a lot of things get solved. We know exactly what not to work on, which frees us up as developers for so many other security issues that we can just focus on, critical issues which we can solve. So in the area of reachability analysis, how we can use intelligence.
Yes, so that is one area which I've been looking into, and so far the reachability analysis and not AI is not, able to sort of, I mean, it's yet to reach to a level where it can identify that, because there are some 3 to 4 different ways where reachability analysis is happening. The first one, I think you mentioned the functional way. So, for example, if say a simple example could be if using a jQuery version which is like vulnerable, and but the only exploitability possible is if you use under circumstances, on a particular circumstances, like under a function in some other method, if you call, then only it will become exploitable. So the overall complexity is so much here, so it's very difficult for the current data available to train the models to catch this kind of scenario. So far any reachability analysis you see available today doesn't use AI so far. it could be, over the time. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's complex scenario. So that is just one way, the functional way. There are other ways also. There are tools which like go through the what has been declared in their manifests, and then what is being actually being used in the code. So basically, they do some sort of intelligence and figure out that, okay, this function has been called or this library has been called, but it is not declared in the manifest, and what is declared there is not being actually used. So basically, it brings you that focused set of areas, set of dependencies which you need to take care. So yeah, I would say AI is yet to evolve to a level of reachability analysis. So far, I have not seen any case where people are using it for reachability analysis. But if any of the viewers comes across, please, I would be happy to learn about it.
I think it's an interesting area. I personally haven't tried, but yeah, any of the listeners who are watching it or have ideas or are already working in the area of reachability analysis, feel free to reach out to Shashank on this area. Um, okay, I could actually go on and on because of the whole aspect of exploitability, which is so practically important for security. Does depend on so many things, right? It depends on controls that are there in place. It depends on, of course, the code controls where you have validations, you have other kind of things which you have built into the code. You have network controls which may be there, which will prevent that attack from happening. So there are different layers. Since we are building so many layers, it's difficult for just the AI or the intelligence to know what all controls are available. That also defines exploitability in a way. Reachability is specific because it's just talking about code. So whether it's just reachable or not, and hence exploitable or not. So that may still be solved, but eventually, when we are looking at the problem of exploitability, it might still be another leap for intelligence to go. Yeah, good time for hackers then.
So one more thing, what I saw is like, with the AI wave now, sometimes people are also overdoing the AI, which is not required.
Hmm.
Like, so that I'm not sure. I think that bubble is going to soon, not soon. Maybe it will take some time for bubble to people to realize that that AI was not required here, but we still did it, and that is something we are not okay with now.
Any
So yeah,
specific areas you have in mind? Because we do have that, and I'm just teasing the brains of some of the other guests also who are actively working in this area, where they clearly call out, as of today, if you're trying intelligence in these areas, is of not much ROI. It's not much return on investment. You may do it, doesn't make a huge difference. Do you see any of those areas?
yeah, I just saw, just a very simple example. How many, have you seen the LinkedIn recently has a below thing which basically is AI powered, and
Ah, yes.
like if yeah,
Yeah.
so how many times you click there? Tell me.
Never.
So it's like unnecessary overdoing of AI. I feel personally. I mean, people can have different.
That's an interesting perspective, but I think I should share. It's okay. I think sometimes I think that they're just doing it for training their models. It's just we
There
are
is a correct.
we are the data, the quality data that they want. But yeah. So yeah, coming back to this, the practical aspects of also building intelligence, and we're talking about. I wanted to come out of the code a little bit, and the pipelines, and we've been talking about, okay, where to build, what to solve for until now. One of the things that, while doing anything, and of course applies to building intelligence as well, is your application ecosystem. So I'm talking about a lot of different components within your environment or within your business context where you need to integrate with different components that you have, whether it be authentication, whether it be for authorization, for anything else, where you are integrating with other components in your environment. Uh, what have you seen with respect to intelligence? Can it actually it has the capability of accommodating these complexities when it comes to integration.
So there are solutions, especially in the area of anomaly detection. So, for example, a developer code committed, if it is like somewhere out of the usual way. For example, the LOCs committed are sort of obfuscated, or which is like not a usual way of doing it, or or if um, a, a package which is not like updated for a long time and suddenly there is an update. So there are works happening at the anomaly detection level. It's just a simple example of developer behavior, but again, the I think coming to authentication, authorization. So I think AI can help here big time in this kind of outliers or anomalies which are happening. And that's where I think it can be a big game changer when it comes to software supply chain security, because it doesn't just revolve around few things. It also includes the developer behavior. It also includes your container
Yeah.
registry. Something goes wrong there, it's like a dangerous thing. So yeah, things are happening, but right now, as I said, it's yet to catch to a level where security guys proudly can say, okay, this is what we should adopt, and uh,
So actually I was also thinking of the area of, so right, like you rightly pointed out, the area of anomaly detection, and we had this last season an episode on identity threats, and I think they are also trying to use it in a big way in identity threats, because there is a lot of behavioral analysis, anomaly detection that we can do there. If we bring it down to the software supply chain in general, and we are able to look at, if you look at particularly many of the listeners would be aware of, for example, solar winds happened,
yeah,
the Uber issue happened, it was a
yes,
secrets leak. Yeah, there was a code curve incident that happened. There are so many such incidents that have happened. Each of them are very different from each other. However, many of those are actually anomalies at the time that they were occurring. So to be able to proactively detect these kind of issues, the system might need to talk to so many different, so with respect to integration, the system itself, the intelligence will need to talk to so many other uh, systems, including whether it is authentication, whether it is your IDP, identity provider, or any other things, and look at what the context is and why a developer is, for example, releasing a certain piece of code at certain time in the day when they never do it, for example. So all of those could be an area. I don't know how much work has happened. Do you see that a lot of work has happened in that space in terms of the environment security for software development?
yeah. I think I am not aware of much of any specific cases like that, but yeah, there are some companies which have been tracking, which are like doing a good job, especially when it comes to supply chain security, who are like uh, very unique solutions they have for when it comes to dependency checks and reachability analysis, and also using AI to sort of how to propose alternatives to a particular package. So, for example, if Log4j is a risky package, then what are the alternatives? Also, AI bot can help basically to suggest that kind of things, and it also can help to runtime, not runtimes, like while developer is on the on work, and then a plugin can sort of immediately alert the developer saying that, hey, these are the dependencies which are sort of risky, and then these are the alternative possible. So there are companies who are into that space, but as you said, with this complex systems talking to each other and then creating a sort of strong sense of securities, I think that is yet to be achieved, and yet to be, maybe people might be researching, but I'm not exactly aware of anything specific. I think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think it's a lot more complex than maybe we can do in this episode. Maybe we'll have it in the next episode. But it will also need some systems to maybe there, like for example, some level of maturity, some level of automation, where the systems, where the intelligence can learn from what is usual and then look at what behavior is not. For example, if you never signed the code in the first place,
Yeah,
it might be difficult to for it to say that, hey, this is because signing, authenticated signing, for example, so when that was never involved, it will be difficult for them to even say that there was an anomaly when somebody else actually pushed the
yeah,
code.
yeah.
All right, okay, that was a lot of it, I think. But I wanted to, finally, before we close, for many of us who are practically trying to have even some level of intelligence built into our security automation, where, like, when do you think is the right time to look at having AI as a part of their processes to secure their build infra? Are there any specific salsa levels that they need to be achieving? Like what guides us to be starting to use AI in a smoother fashion? What level of maturity should we have as teams?
So, in fact, what I have seen, Niluki, this solutions which are available, which are AI powered, are basically helping the teams which are not very matured. So there is no like categorization. I could say that after achieving this particular maturity level, then only you should try AI. But it's not like that. Uh, even the organizations or the smaller setups where you don't have a luxury of security teams or luxury of skills in-house skill set are they have a very good options today in the market to select and then start using AI in their developer workflows to integrate security, bring that security automation, much needed security scans, everything in one place. So it's fairly available today and very much approachable with affordable cost. It's not like going to cost like the legacy tools what we had in security. So that is accessible, but at the same time, what is important is every team has certain level of maturity, like in terms of how your version control systems are, how your build management systems are, how the overall pipeline has been designed, and what is the in-house capabilities available. So every team sets on a different level of maturity, and first thing is to identify those pain points which you have, like addressing the false positives is one such pain point, or developer education is another pain point which you might be experiencing. So depends on the pain point which you have. I think that's where you should start searching for AI solutions where which can sort of directly fit in and sort of bring down that the overall overhead or cognitive overload, the words we started. So that's where I think it needs to be figured out.
So while we start with the AI powered tools that are already there, right, which will solve for some of these areas already with us, is there a certain level we can be for the custom intelligence that we may want to build as teams? This is more for example, mid-sized organization or larger sized organizations which need to have a more customized intelligence built into their pipelines.
So can you give some simple examples of
So, for
custom?
example, if you're solving for, so the tools like you mentioned don't have for reachability analysis, but we do an analysis of our cognitive workload, and we understand that hey, reachability is one area that's causing the maximum false positives. While the AI powered tool is able to help with some of this, because reachability is not one of the AI powered tools area, we may need to solve for it. Some of the larger
Yes.
organizations they do such cost customizations very often, but what are the other things that should be in place for them? Like, will it be a fully functioning DevOps, or will it be like a certain, if you're Salsa 2, it's a good point to start, or is there some defining factors for them who are doing it custom for themselves?
So yeah, I think to start with, I think salsa is a very good start. I mean, if you are able to reach to a level two, and there is a lot of automation which is available. There are there are very strong solutions today which are offering that if you use them, you will achieve the level of salsa 3 directly. So there's a lot of automation which is existing in the industry today. But if you want to build it in house, then definitely I think as an in-house team you have this advantage of getting access to the code, which is your responsibility, and then you basically can come up with the automations which can sort of do this kind of, because you have access to the information, you can build your own way of reachability analysis. There are ways which are very much available today to how the world is doing it. And I think with some intelligence and the automation and then coding, you can basically arrive to some sort of solution for yourself for in-house, which will be very much customized to your need. So you can do that. I mean, if in-house teams are interested, have the bandwidth, I think you don't need to always look for a third-party vendor for this kind of automations. You can build
Yeah,
it
if
by
you
yourself.
have those kind of niche problem statements and necessarily that we need to solve for. But yeah, it seems a lot is available outside already, and a lot of us can start using it. It's quite democratized, I see, in terms of what we have. Just with my experience, what I've been seeing, and of course with what inputs you've given today to us, Shashank. Thanks a lot for joining us today in this episode. Any parting words for people trying to build intelligence, either in the pipelines or everywhere, before you go?
So my words of wisdom is don't overdo the AI. AI comes with its own set of problems. Whatever is essential, which can bring a 10x difference in your day-to-day works, that's where I think you should think of AI. And I mean, there's a lot happening, and I think next few years coming is just going to be very exciting for security industry when it comes to AI.
Yes, and with that, we'll close the episode here. Thanks a lot for joining us, Shashank, in this episode of Breakpoint.
Thank you, Neely. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, great. See you everyone in the next episode of Breakpoint. Until then, bye bye. Hey y'all, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Breakpoint Security Podcast. Your support means that we can bring more such conversations back to you. Share with your friends and colleagues, and stay tuned for more episodes from Breakpoint. Until then, bye bye.